This is the Team Objection podcast for August 13th, 2020, episode 448. We told you what was going to happen this week if certain things fell into place the way they were supposed to. For example,
and it's homework.
It's homework time. Hopefully Dave's ready. We've been preparing for it. No, I'm just kidding. We said last week when it was just me and Shaun that if the Suns did happen to do something crazy like continue to win and end up being something like 7-0 by the time this Tuesday happened for recording, that we would do another Suns cast. They have gone 7-0. We're doing another Suns cast.
Yep.
Dave.
Yes.
Have you heard the legend of the Suns hat?
I have heard minuscule things about it. Something about its powers only having a limited range of time.
No. Okay. Here's the legend. So, I'm not a hat guy. Never really worn hats in my life. But I found this hat in the closet, and I started wearing it for runs. See, what happened was I started building a bond. I developed that chemistry with the hat, okay? I went to Phoenix, and I swam in the pool with the hat. That's how attached we got. And a mix of, this is the origin story, of the chlorinated water and the solar rays of Phoenix's all-time hot temperatures infused the hat with good karma. I call it karmasty. Always have. And this hat has led the Suns on this run. It's not Devin Booker's play. It's certainly not DeAndre Ayton's play.
Damn.
It's the hat. And I know what you're thinking. But let me assure you, Chris did the math. This hat is plus 14.
That was just today, but yeah.
That's today.
But if overall, actually,
we've also discovered hat powerless to change other things that affect the Suns because the Blazers still won anyways with some fluky stuff at the end. So hat has power, but it's not omnipotent.
And I don't know if it doesn't work or if the person wearing the Portland hat and infusing all the vaping smoke in Portland is just more powerful than this hat is for Phoenix. You know, the hat hierarchy is weird.
So see that worries me because if the Blazers hat has more power, then
over the Blazers in that game,
Suns play the Blazers.
What? No, I'm saying like my hat affects the Suns. My hat doesn't affect the Blazers as much. It's diluted, you know?
Yeah, okay. All right. Okay.
Devin Booker does not hit a game winner without this hat, okay? We don't come back against a depleted Philadelphia team without this hat. See, I'm trying to weave in like a recap while I'm bullshitting.
Even though it's not true, right?
Yeah.
Because you weren't watching the Booker game winner live.
That's true. But the hat was.
The hat was watching. The hat had access to the stream. That makes sense. So anyways, they have done the impossible, and yet, despite that, having taken their 0.1% chance of making the playoffs, according to the math, before the bubble play started, and done everything they could to this point, and had some favorable breaks in their favor from other teams, they are walking into today, as of the day this airs, Thursday, not in control of their destiny. Because the Blazers beat the Mavericks on Tuesday night, the Suns can win today, then in a game that starts shortly after this episode goes up, and still not make it into the play-in game if both the Grizzlies and Blazers win as well. So that sucks.
That's disturbing.
Now, technically, it was a .01 or .1 for to win the championship. So
I think even their playoff odds were that.
It was. I think odds in Vegas were like 10,000 to 1 for the Suns to win the championship. But yeah, it was less than 1% just to make the playoffs.
So the only reason I bring this up, and it's not to correct anyone, but I was thinking today, oh man, I really should have made that Vegas bet. And if it was 10,000 to 1 to make the playoffs, and we're like kind of on the doorstep, I would drive to Vegas now just to like jump off a bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Like that would be, that was $10,000 that was in my hand.
But if it had been 10,000 to 1 to make the playoffs, I would have taken that bet.
Yeah, you could throw $10 on that.
Because like you said, that was we only needed certain things to break the right way, and they have. Now, granted, the main thing was the Suns winning, which even us, some of the most ardent Suns supporters, all kind of settled on that 5-3 range. Well, we blew that out of the water.
Well, that's so funny because imagine if we were 5-3 right now, we'd be like pretty happy, I think.
Yeah.
We'd have no shot at the play. I mean, zero.
Yeah, completely none. But it's crazy. Yeah, all of us. I think the best. We were hoping 6-2 was going to be like, man, if we went 6-2, I think that's a pretty good showing. It's going to be real rough to make the playoffs there, but hey, maybe a couple things will fall our way. We have really, I wouldn't say dominated in every game, but there's no one who has even shown really a sign that they could beat us. The Clippers were up there, but Booker did what he did, and every other game since then, we've been lucky with some roster breaks, but we've beaten every team thoroughly since then, which has been really nice to see.
Well, you can look at it and be like, oh, come on, is Campaign going to play every game like that? Or you needed Javon Carter to hit a bunch of threes. And it's like, okay, but that's a good team when every night someone different is stepping up to give you good minutes or a scoring burst. Like, that's what good teams do. I can tell you how many times I'm watching a Suns game, I'm like, who the fuck is this guy torching the Suns I've never heard of? He has 30. Yep. Now, it's partially because the Suns have terrible defense, but the point is good teams find ways to win because different people contribute. And we are getting that now, and people are like, oh, like they're trying to poo-poo it. And it's like, this is bullshit.
Yeah, Frank Kaminsky had 11 points in the first half. I mean, granted, it was spoon-fed some layups, but he still had 11 points in the first half against the Sixers.
I give him credit for being active, at least.
Yeah.
He put himself in a good position, but yeah, it was also our players finding him.
It also felt like he was kind of overdue. I mean, he's been shooting like 14% in the bubble, so even though Kaminsky can be streaky, those numbers aren't sustainable. Like, nobody hangs in the NBA shooting 14%.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's a lot of different factors to it. Like we mentioned, the last couple games against the Sixers, that was a train wreck of nobody playing. Against the Thunder was a train wreck of nobody playing. But at the end of the day, you can only play the team that's presented to you. And the Suns had to still win. They were challenged in both games, a little bit more difficult against the Sixers than it was against the Thunder, who rolled over and died starting in the second quarter. But it doesn't matter. And other teams have also had games where they've picked up on it, like the Spurs, when the Jazz were just like, they were just going to rest everybody.
For every team that's played the Clippers, we played them full fucking strength, okay? Don't give me that shit. Mm-hmm. And other teams played them like Kawhi resting, Paul George resting, both resting. So I don't want to hear it.
Nope.
Everyone's had their own breaks. I mean, everything's fallen the way it has. I mean, we knew this was kind of going to be a weird end of the bubble when everyone was basically trying to either A, play their ass off to get in the playoffs, or B, okay, they've got our seeding, we're set, we don't really need to do anything. Kind of like that Bucks Grizzlies game that's coming up later today as of airing on Thursday. That's such a weird mix of games of team that has everything to play for and absolutely nothing to play for.
There's going to be a lot of spotlight on those games, though. So I feel like the Bucks are going to show up at least to some extent.
Yeah.
Now, they've had a couple other games during the bubble where they would start their guys and then not really play the fourth quarter. Their infamous loss to the very shorthanded Nets is one of those examples. Giannis was supposed to maybe miss both of the games with his tooth issues that he's having, but he played Tuesday night. So hopefully he plays Thursday, because to me that's the hardest part for the Grizzlies to overcome, is they don't have anybody to guard Giannis. A lot of teams don't, but they certainly don't.
Yeah, especially with JJJ out.
Mm-hmm.
That absolutely nobody even tried to at that point.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what the plan would be there, but good luck.
Yeah. So I figured I would take a look. There's really three scenarios that can happen, I think, with the Suns that can happen.
Let's do it.
All right. The Suns can win the 8th seed in one or two different ways. So we can play the Blazers if the Suns win. Grizzlies lose, Blazers lose, and Spurs lose. So if that happens, we play the Blazers, we're the 8th seed. That's, I think, best case. That's obviously preferred scenario. We can also play 8th seed against the Spurs, however, if the Grizzlies lose, Blazers lose, and Spurs win, and the Suns win.
Yeah, that's best case scenario.
Yeah, it's probably best case scenario, but wow, I could not imagine at the beginning of the season. I mean, obviously, you couldn't imagine any of this at the beginning of the season, but even at the beginning of the bubble, the idea of the Suns playing the Spurs for the right to go to the playoffs. Never would have saw that.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah, I'm all for that. The Blazers are one of the best teams in the West right now, in my opinion. So if for some reason we could get all four of those outcomes, which feels like that parlay you stick $10 on and hope it pays out, like 100 to 1. I don't think that's going to happen under any scenario because the Jazz fucking suck. But sure, maybe. And that, like I said, the biggest thing is the Portland-Memphis part, and we have to win, obviously. No matter who we play as the 8th seed, doesn't matter that much. We got 2 cracks at it to win 1.
Yep, exactly. The less favorable outcomes are making the 9th seed. That is, Suns win. Basically, all of these include Suns win, because if we lose, we're done. It's over if we lose. Suns need to win. Grizzlies need to lose. Blazers need to win. We would be the 9th seed playing the 8th seed Blazers. That is probably the toughest scenario that comes across if we make the play-in game, because beating the Blazers twice is pretty rough, I'd say.
I think so as well, but you never know. I mean, you can catch Lillard on an off night. He hasn't had any of those since Paul George called him out, and then he responded by dunking all over him again. But that's possible. At the very least, it'd be nice to have it to play for. And if you don't win 2 games back against the Blazers, I'm not gonna be like, oh, we suck. This is all for nothing. It'd be like, no, the Blazers are good, and we scratched and we clawed, and it didn't work out.
Yep.
But I'd rather the other scenario, which is Suns win, Memphis wins, Blazers lose, and then take on Memphis in that spot instead, because Memphis is extremely vulnerable right now.
Yeah, this is this is probably the most unlikely scenario, I would say, is that happening, where the Blazers lose and Memphis wins. Like that, I don't know how that happens, basically.
Do we have a scenario where the Suns play Memphis? I don't think so, right? Like, that's almost not even possible in the way that it works.
Not if the Suns are the 8 seed. We can play Memphis as the 9 seed, and the Memphis is the 8 seed.
Oh, yeah, right.
The Grizzlies win, Suns win.
No. Yeah, I knew about that one, but not as the 8 seed. It's like not possible,
because
right?
we're tied with them, and they have the tiebreaker.
Exactly. That's a Ja Morant dunking all over Aaron Baines earlier this season, away from the Suns being in the playoffs, essentially, because that was a sick dunk early in the year. But I mean, out of all those scenarios, I would figure 8 seed against the Spurs is the most preferable outcome as far as the easiest path. But strangely enough, it almost feels like, I mean, playing the Grizzlies, even if we're in the 9 seed, feels like we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I think either one of those 2 outcomes would be the best, but they're also the least likely. I think the most likely way we have a shot is Blazers 8, us 9. We have to beat Portland twice.
Yep.
Everything else, those 2 outcomes you mentioned, like you said, against the Spurs, requires 4 specific outcomes. So even if you just called those games a coin flip, the odds of having all those happen are 6%. Now, there's some different favorings in there. Who the hell knows? But whatever. Like, it's not likely. And then in the case of the Grizzlies, then it's 3 specific outcomes, one of which is Portland losing, which I wouldn't want to bet on. Nope. Whereas just making it there just requires Suns wins, Grizzlies lose. Doesn't matter what the Spurs do if the Suns win. That one you could see. The Suns, it would be hard to pick against them at this point. And the Grizzlies have lost 6 of their 7 games in the bubble. So those 2 things could happen, and that gets us 9th against the Blazers, which is still an uphill battle. But hey, I'd love to have something to play for.
Yep. I find myself, it's funny, even like Portland's like our enemy in this, right? I fucking hate Dallas, and I fucking hate Utah. And I find myself not hating the Blazers, even though like they're kind of our direct competition. And even if the Blazers eliminate us, I'm going to be like, I mean, they're a good team. But it's like Dallas and Utah. It's like, you guys can't even suck correctly. Like, you're the worst. You're the fucking worst. I hate all of you.
I gotta say, watching earlier on Tuesday, watching the Blazers-Mavericks game, I wanted to just go punch Luka Doncic in the face, I think. Everyone's been selling him up about the greatest thing. I mean, Bill Simmons literally said he could be better. He's going to be better than Larry Bird. And my God. And Luka was terrible against the Blazers. I mean, he got the line, sure. He was garbage that game.
He actually didn't get to the line. That's part of the key. And the stark difference between when he played us earlier in the bubble and that game against Portland. Because the Mavs shot more free throws than the Blazers in that game, despite Lillard getting what felt like 16 3-shot fouls. Yeah. But Luka wasn't the reason for that. Everybody else was. He had 25, 9, and 7. But he was 6 of 16 from the field and had 5 turnovers. So...
Everybody's like, it's his league. It's Luka's league. And I'm like, he wasn't even the best player on the court today. He wasn't even the best player on the Mavs today.
Not at all.
So, yeah. So, now, I mean, you look at 8-8 and...
Was not.
Don't even get me fucking started. I mean, we are... The most our team suffered today, Dave, I don't know how much you got to watch the game, was when we were trying to force touches for Ayton to... get him engaged in offense. It threw off our entire team rhythm because he sucked and we were trying to force him to become a part of the game.
Yeah. Alternatively, I will say though, the game against the Thunder, when he missed the first part of the first quarter, we looked terrible. He came in and we instantly looked better. I don't know how much of that you can say on the Thunder, kind of losing some steam, but he came in and we all of a sudden took off at that point. I mean, Ayton didn't score a ton that game, but had a double-double. Seemingly played well, but
yeah, I don't think it hasn't been a terrible bubble for him.
He's inconsistent, and that's the problem.
It's been inconsistent, but it's kind of been going downhill pretty consistently too.
Yeah. And it was too bad because the beginning of this 76ers game, he won the tip, immediately ran down court. Ricky Rubio found him for a dunk. I'm like, great, he's engaged, already sprinting down the court. This is fantastic. Let's get an engaged 8 and let's get 25 and 12, which he did against the Pacers. He had a great game against the Pacers earlier this year. Had a pretty good game against Miami, I think. It seems like he just floats too often, and I think that's the biggest criticism. Even though, like I say, he's 20 years old and a walking double-double even when he sucks, basically.
Well, I don't know how worried I am about him. I am a little worried, but a few years ago, I remember me saying the same thing about Booker. The guy is talented, and not the empty stat thing, but like he doesn't take over games. Like he's so talented, you want to see him like really apply himself, and when he needs to carry the team, he does it. And he kind of deferred, and every once in a while he'd do it, but it wasn't consistent. Well, now you look at this bubble. I mean, there are probably 3 players in the running for bubble MVP. He's one of them. Mm-hmm. I'm biased. He's probably my vote. Like T.J. Warren is a great offensive player. Booker has been doing fucking everything.
Yeah.
And Damian Lillard though is probably the number 1. But I mean, he's in the conversation, and he's been like Kobe-esque. Like he takes control. He gets you buckets when you need it, and he's looked unstoppable.
Yep. It's when you bring up the bubble MVP, I think it's Damon Booker are the only true options here. And it's kind of basically whoever makes the playoffs might be the MVP. Because if Booker goes 8-0 and makes the playoffs, I don't know how you can deny. Like if they get in the 8th seed, I don't know how you deny Booker being the MVP in that situation. Especially if they beat Dame twice. But it's gonna be tough. I think it's Booker and Dame for sure are the 1-2 option on that.
I think if they even make the play-in game, whether the Blazers do or not, he should be the MVP. Yeah, the Blazers have a better team, and Lillard's been really, really good, no question. But he also cost his team a game. So those 2 free throws shouldn't weigh against the entire body of evidence that Dame Lillard has. But I think that should be a factor. They had the margin of error to weather the storm of Lillard fucking up the end of a game, and the Suns did not. They clearly don't. No matter what happens from this point, we know now if they had lost 1 game, they would already be out of consideration for this playoff spot. Well, the play-in game.
Yep.
To me, that matters. But I think to your point, Shaun, the consistency has been the most impressive, and we've seen this from Booker the last couple seasons, but it's just been that extra little bit in the bubble. And, you can just put him down for, like, bare minimum, like 24 and 6.
Yeah. Oh, my God, yeah.
Just bare minimum.
He's been, like, consistent for 35, which is crazy. That's 2 straight games at 35, right?
I told Shaun this off air, and one of the times we've been watching the game, but since after his rookie season, Devin Booker has more games of 30-plus than he does less than 20.
Good Lord.
Think about that for a second.
Well, I mean, I think I heard the previous Suns record for games scoring over 30 points in a season was 29, I believe. Booker just broke that record, Walter Davis' old record. He scored his 30th 30-point game this year already.
Mm-hmm.
It's
well, in what is going to be a shortened season. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Let's keep that in mind too.
Yeah,
I do. What I like is, I really think the biggest factor. People said, well, is it the no crowd? Less pressure? Is it just you only have 8 games, so you're just trying really hard? I think it's as simple as he's healthy. And like, how often in his career has he been kind of hurt, had a nagging injury, but he's felt like I have to play or we're absolute garbage. We're even garbage if I do play, but like if I don't play, we have no chance. And it's really refreshing to see. Like you look at him, he looks like he's faster. He has a little more control, a faster first step, and bounce in his step, and it's been like so good to watch.
It's not even if I don't play, we're going to be garbage. It's if I don't play and I control every facet of the offense of I have to bring the ball up, create my own shot, set up everyone. Like he had to do literally everything 2 seasons ago. Like even in last season, he had to do everything. Having Rubio there, having somebody who can kind of take the playmaking away from him has been just a godsend for him as far as his ascension, I think. And then having Mikal Bridges being an option off the side, Cam Johnson being a good option. There are people that you have to honor on the Suns as opposed to just being like, well, stop Booker and we'll be fine. Because who's going to be this? Dragon Bender? Marquise Chris? Like, having these guys who are actually NBA players is really helping him out, and it's amazing how it works for people when they say you just have to drag a team to the playoffs. No, it doesn't exactly work that way. You need competent players around you.
What do you think? I I think it's been really interesting how we've accidentally stumbled into this really awesome starting lineup. You know, because here's the question: are we in this position if Kelly's healthy? And maybe, but I don't know. The chemistry has been so good with Cam and Bridges, with Johnson and Bridges, and the defense. And Kelly's not bad at defense, but he doesn't have the same impact that Bridges does on D, especially the man-on-man defense.
It's just proving to me that Kelly Oubre will be the ultimate sixth man.
I hope he buys into it. But I'm with you.
If he does, because having Bridges there as the starter and Kelly coming in with that second unit just wreaking havoc, and he can be a little more of a gunner, I think, on the second unit.
Exactly.
Maybe. And if he's hot, great. If you're hot and hitting threes and you're going to score 30 points off the bench, fantastic. If you're not, maybe get a little bit shorter leash. But he can kind of be the player he wants to be, but then not have to be relied on, if that makes sense, because we have someone who's a little more steady in Bridges.
I think it's important to note that we already have the ultimate sixth man. His name is Dario Saric.
That's true.
Who I would say I also want to keep coming off the bench because he has really found his stride. He was the best player on the floor for a lot of the game today. He was excellent, and at really key moments too.
Well, it wasn't just like shooting or anything. He was getting rebounds. He was fighting for offensive rebounds, getting putbacks,
passing.
Yeah, passing. Yeah.
And his three, he's shooting with such confidence on his three.
Mm-hmm.
That's been really great to see, and that's why I'm like Cam Johnson. He's been good in the starting lineup, and I've liked that. But it also allows Sharsh to come off the bench, which I think is kind of perfect for him.
I mean,
he's not quite a starter, but he's like a great on the second unit.
Mm-hmm. I look at it as if we had our full roster of what we had, of our 6th, 7th, and 8th man being Kelly Oubre, Dario Saric, and Aaron Baines, I feel good about this team in a lot of ways. I wish those guys were able to come back, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen this year, unfortunately, or ever, because who knows what's going to happen with Baines next season or Saric next year. But man, that is a heck of a lineup, I think.
Before the bubble, you looked at the roster, and I think the clear-cut problem that you were looking to address in the offseason was the 4. And now I think to myself, whatever additional talent you can bring in to bolster the bench will be of use. Maybe Campaign solves the backup point guard spot, and that was another one that was maybe kind of an issue because Javon Carter clearly better off the ball coming off the bench. He's been very good as well. And Elliot Kobo and Ty Jerome might be lost causes. Now, Jerome's only a rookie, so I'm not writing him off completely, but he's certainly not NBA ready right now. So you're looking at the 1 or the 4. Well, Campaign has filled in the 1. He struggled tremendously against the Sixers today, but did play well in the fourth quarter. And the 4 seems to be solved by a combination of maybe Cam Johnson, some Oubre, and if you're going to re-sign Saric, you can squeak out 48 minutes of the 3 of them splitting time at that position pretty easily. Or Bridges. Bridges has played the 4 a little bit in some small ball lineups. I don't think that would be the case if Baines and Oubre were healthy. But even so, in spot minutes each game, he's played there for 5 to 10, and he's looked fine. So now I just think, we just have to get some other player in the offseason with the money that we have. Somebody on a good deal, somebody young who fits our timeline. Round that out where you have a really solid 10-man rotation. And the other stuff seems to already kind of be there. I'm not saying we may win 50 games next year, but I feel like 500 and or above should be in play.
I feel like, 500 and playoffs is going to be an expectation. I mean, that's what I figure.
And if you go from a year where, in 2 years, I guess, you won 21 games last year. You win 33, 34 games this year.
In a shortened season.
And then you go to 500 the following year. That's tremendous, advancement, improvement. Not a lot of teams can claim that improvement.
Because, we can dive into this more when we get to the offseason, do the year in review, look back. But who's going to get better in the West next year? The Warriors?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's one. But then who? Because the cap's probably going to go down. Salaries are only going to go up, and then who's going to have the ability to add somebody? The Clippers can't add anybody. They have no cap room and no assets to trade. The Lakers can't add anybody. They have 2 max contracts, no cap room, and no assets to trade.
Well, and then you look at, what's going on with Utah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Gobert's about to get an extension. They can't afford it.
That almost makes me think, and I don't know, maybe I'm just being a drama queen. It makes me believe more of the whispers that you've been hearing about Utah, that they have, I mean, as far as I know, they have the same team, right? They haven't had like a lot of injuries or people out.
I think Bojan Bogdanovic hurts them a lot more than people give it credit. He was very good for them this year, but let's not pretend like the rise and fall of Utah hinges on Bojan Bogdanovic. An important player, and they don't really have a guy to replace him all that successfully. But that's about it. Everybody else has been pretty much there. And Mike Conley's actually playing better in the bubble than he was all season, but it hasn't been enough.
Like, they're terrible. The Spurs are probably going to be right there again. They had a lot of injuries, and now we're seeing some healthy players back. And unfortunately, that's just probably going to be the case.
Dallas could get better if they can finally add a third star.
Yeah, I mean, Dallas is weird. They kind of suck, too. Like, I don't...
Houston's tapped out. Because, again, they got 2 stars making the max, and so they're both making $40 million. If the cap's $105 million, there's only so much wizardry you can do, whether you're Daryl Morey or not.
It's interesting. I feel like there's all these things that are going to decline, but I don't think any team is out. I don't know of any team in the West that's going to be, like, tanking, though. There's not any team that's outright going to be like, okay, this season we're throwing this season away in the West. I feel like 15 teams are like, yeah, we can go make a playoff shot.
Well, the Pelicans are probably going to get better with Zion, right? So that's...
If he can stay healthy.
If he can stay healthy, yeah. And that's been a little weird, too. Is he out of shape? Is there some kind of physical, like performing a physical, not passing it? Is that... that whole thing is getting really weird, too. I'm hoping, for the sake of the league, for the sake of him, he seems like a good kid, which is weird for me to say now, especially because he looks like he could be my dad. But yeah, I don't know.
The main takeaway from the bubble experience, just to kind of keep from going too much on the end of season stuff, is consistency is king. What I'm noticing about this team now is like they're not tremendously more talented than they were earlier in the season. They had some issues with Ayton's suspension, whatever. But unlike the last few seasons when it's been this hodgepodge, helter-skelter, terrible constructed roster, a revolving door of coaches, we're seeing what can happen when there's time and some NBA quality players to work together under a solid system and then maintain it for any meaningful amount of time. In fact, I think it's why the Suns have been best positioned of most teams to improve in the bubble, is because they could benefit the most from that extra time off to get healthy, but also just kind of spend time together and then work out more once they were allowed to. It's been really refreshing just to know that certain nights there are guarantees. Booker's going to get his stuff every night without fail. Maybe he'll have a slightly worse or slightly better night, but he's getting his numbers. And then the other things around him are what have changed the most. You know you're going to get dogged defensive effort from Carter. Is he going to hit 6 threes every night? No, but it doesn't matter. His defense is a constant. Bridges' defense is a constant. His offense is hit or miss, but you know his defense is there. Ayton's defense has been a constant. His effort and offense has been all over the map. Before, though, we had none of those. You didn't know what you were going to get from Marquise Chris.
Yeah, and I think the biggest way you saw that was the offensive consistency. That's great. I love it. More importantly, there were games, the Washington game comes to mind earlier this year. We could just not get a stop. Ever. We played the whole game. I think they scored like 150 points. Or very close to. We couldn't stop them at any possession, at any point. Mm-hmm. And now, even when we have lapses, it's like, okay, we know Bridges is going to make a good defensive play at some point, and we're going to get that stop and start to get it back. Like, we have that personnel now, and then it's amazing. When you play good defense, the offense kind of comes.
And similarly, they can stand to have that consistency on the offensive end because Booker represents like half of it on his own. So having then players around him who are consistent on the defensive end, where he is... I don't think he's terrible, but I think it's still fair to say he's below average. He's got a good head for the game. He's in the passing lanes pretty well. He's a smart team defender. It's kind of like the MO for Steve Nash, except Booker has better physical attributes. Mm-hmm. But that consistency on the defensive end, along with a handful of other people that they can just rely on, like you said, now he can actually pass it out to a Cam Johnson for 3. He's ready and willing and eager to because he knows Cam has a high percentage chance to hit that shot. When he's kicking it out to Dragan Bender, it's like, well... this is the right look, I guess, but then, Bender starts 0 for 5, and Booker goes, I guess I'm shooting 28 times this game. Here we go.
I think it's a question of, did Booker always have those passing chops, or did he develop them? Did he always have them and just didn't pass because he didn't have competent teammates around him, or did he really develop them over the past couple years.
I think he's getting better.
I think he's been developing them, but I think it's also I think he worked on it a ton after his rookie season.
Mm-hmm.
I think you could see this a lot in year 2. I think the difference now is A, he has continued to make incremental improvements, but B, the personnel on the floor dictates that he actually has more space to work with, because there are people that have to be defended on the perimeter and not just jokes and cast-offs that they can slouch off into the lane on him and then take away the passing lanes. I think it's both. I think he's definitely worked, and you can see more improvement since then. But it's amazing what having competent NBA players on the floor can do, because they can't just devote triple teams to him. They have to have some respect for the other players on the floor.
They brought a double team in the play today, and we immediately hit a 3.
I think that was the only time they doubled, because he had taken like 7 straight shots and or gotten to the line or dished off. So they finally decided, all right, we'll double him on the low block. Swung it around to the outside, Bridges corner 3. Didn't double again.
That's such a weapon to have. And, I mean, amongst all of that, like you said, we have competent NBA players. I think we have a real competent leader of a coach.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like Igor was maybe a better basketball mind if you're drawing out plays, because I think he's really talented at that. But Monty Williams seems like somebody who you talk to and just feel like, yes, I understand you, I want to play for you type of thing.
Well, we don't have to even guess that. Every player has been like, we love Monty, he's a great coach. The players went to Monty and are like, we want you to coach us. And Monty's like, okay, well, you got to be okay with me. I'm going to call you out, and I'm going to like demand improvement. And they were like, that's great. Like, we trust you. And, you know, it doesn't matter what your X's and O's are if the players don't trust you.
Yeah. I mean, obviously coaching and game plans are extremely important in the NBA, but players are so much more important. I mean, you can have a great coach who has terrible players and they're not going to win. They're just not going to in the NBA. So having those players that buy into it and play hard and follow the game plan and work together, I don't know how you can put a value on that really easily for a coach. So it's really nice having somebody who sticks up for his players when needed and probably gives them a hard time and chastises them privately, like Ayton missing his COVID test and missing the first quarter of the Thunder game. All Monty Williams said in the press was, everything's fine, it happens. I even mess up, I can't remember if I got tested or not that morning, whatever. But I imagine he did something in practice to punish him some way, somehow. It just doesn't need to be out in the open, though.
Mm-hmm. You don't have to make an example of them. He's another reason for that consistency. It's weird to think about the fact that it's still his rookie season. The fact that it was kind of cut in 2 is, I think, responsible for a lot of that. But the biggest key for me is, like you said, Dave, I don't think he's the best X's and O's guys. I haven't been super impressed with his plays out of timeout. But his personality, his leadership has been key. And the other factor to me, this isn't revolutionary. Other teams in the NBA are always looking to do this. But the fact that he insists so strongly on making quick decisions with the ball, and the fact that we have the personnel to do it, is the other reason for our consistency that I think goes unnoticed. There's that and the free throw game. We can talk about all the strides that the individual players have made, but to me, the other 2 bedrocks of why we've made this run in the bubble, we're shooting 82% from the line as a team, which is first in the NBA, and it's when you think of our current 8 or 9 man rotation, there are no weaknesses in that lineup.
If we can keep this clip, it's going to be like one of the all-time best percentages for a year for a team.
But similarly, you can see on the offensive end when there are breakdowns, when the defense gets caught over-rotating, because everybody is willing to immediately make a decision, whether it's pull the trigger on a shot, drive in and kick to somebody else. We've had defenses on their heels in a way that we've seen done to us in the last few years, and instead, we're not doing this ISO crazy stuff. There's no Marcus Morris, like catch the ball from 18 feet, jab step, pivot, jab step, 18-foot fadeaway, brick. The ball's constantly moving, and it's because they've assembled this roster where, again, you look at the top 7 or 8 guys, and especially thanks to Sharch and Ayton's passing ability, everybody can do something with the ball when they get it. Now, Ayton can't always catch it, but other than that, I mean, everything that just kind of gels. We're not the best as far as talent by any means. You can look at us stacked up against other rosters and be like, yeah, I mean, other than Booker and maybe Ayton, we don't have more than 2 of the best 7 players on this roster. But the sum of the parts is finally clicking, and God, is that refreshing after the last 10 years.
Well, I mean, look at a team like Toronto. They lost their best player who won them a championship last year. They very well may make the finals again this year, and it's that cohesiveness, good coach, chemistry, players that play in their role. It's super important, and you can win with a superstar or you can win with a cohesive gel of a team, and the gel of a team is way more fun, I think. Having a superstar is awesome, But having that cohesive gel of a team is more fun.
How many teams like each other right now? Utah, well documented. The Nuggets, not seemingly unhappy, but injury struggles. The Lakers have so many combustible personalities. What a shocker. It's not working out all that well. The Clippers had the Lou Williams incident. Like, those are just 4 of the top teams in the West I mentioned. And none of them, I think, are like just completely on the same page right now. Now, maybe they will be when the playoffs start. But I don't watch any of those teams and go, yeah, these guys really play for each other, for their coach, for their fans. I feel that from our team, and I don't think that's bias.
I don't think it's bias because we haven't had it for a while.
No.
Especially in the Morai years, the dark years, as I call them.
Yeah. The darkest timeline.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I love it. I love that they talk about they would hang out, through Zoom and stuff during quarantine. And yeah, again, we kind of got pulled into the playoff conversation. And I had to remind myself, like, going into this, I didn't really care about the playoffs because I didn't really think there was a chance. I cared about building a foundation for next year. And that's what excites me is we've absolutely, I feel like, done that. We have built so much that I think we can really sustain going into next year. Our defensive schemes now, it's not built on a gimmick anymore, like that nail rotation that would work for like the first week or two and then starts to get overexposed. Like we're playing good defense now. Not great, but like good enough. And all that stuff we can build on for next year, and that's what makes me really excited.
It makes me happy that we could go and fall on our face against the Mavericks, go 7-1 in the bubble. And while I'd be disappointed that we didn't sweep the bubble, it would still be overall. You look back and go, yeah, this is a turning point in the Suns franchise into the 2020s. I think, even if it doesn't work out, even if we win and go 8-0 and still miss the playoffs somehow, which is, oh God, what a horrible thought to think, but it can happen, but you can't be mad about it because of what we've already had happen. I mean, we've turned into a team that nobody is going to walk in thinking like, all right, well, we're beating the Suns tonight. Like, don't have to even play our best players. We've got this one. Like, take the night off, go to Scottsdale. That's not how a road trip to Phoenix is going to be anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I really do. So just to get back to that really quick, here's my prediction. Optimistic prediction. I think the most likely scenario where the Suns make the playoffs is Portland wins, Memphis loses, which means we're the 9th seed playing the 8th seed Portland.
Yep.
Which is so weird. I don't know if we've said it yet in this episode. That is bizarre that we're talking because Memphis wasn't even a consideration when we started this. And that was like a week ago. Week and a half ago, maybe, really?
Yeah, the assumption was Memphis would at least be in the 9 spot. Like, they could maybe fall out at 8 if certain things broke a certain way. And people knew Portland was going to be a tough out when they got healthy. But nobody was like, yeah, because everybody was more focused on the Pelicans, if anything else. It was like, it's Memphis, Portland, maybe the Pelicans. Like, that's it. And it's like, well, you forgot somebody.
Yeah, and I love all the people that are like, the Suns shouldn't even been invited. Thank you, Suns, for, at the very least now, no one can say that. We shouldn't have been invited. We're around when the Pelicans were eliminated, when Sacramento was eliminated. We're here at the very end. So shut the fuck up. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah. And we're really the darlings of the bubble, really.
Yeah.
I mean, the casual fan is hooking onto the Suns for at least this week. I mean, maybe they'll jump on the Blazers bandwagon if the Blazers play the Lakers in the first round of the playoffs. I hope that doesn't happen, obviously. But if the Suns somehow squeak in the playoffs, I mean, we're going to be the darlings of the NBA. For at least another week.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think we lose to the Lakers.
Probably.
And not to get way ahead of ourselves, but I mean, the time is kind of now. If we lose this week, we're not going to be doing the Suns cast next week. I don't think we can beat them, but they're also not as scary as they could be. Like, if there was a time when the Suns could beat this iteration of this LA team,
this is it.
It's kind of now.
They're not 100%.
They have no Avery Bradley, who's like a great defender. So that means Booker's going to have a little more freedom on offense. They're not super cohesive. If I'm the Suns, I'm doubling Anthony Davis every time. Every time.
Yeah.
I think there was some, probably Zach Lowe, because he's the one I listen to, but it's like, make someone else on LA beat you than Anthony Davis just being able to do whatever he wants.
Yeah. I mean, if Ayton can be that defensive stalwart and just size up Anthony Davis, like, I mean, I feel like the Suns would have a shot. I don't think, like I said, I don't think they're going to beat them in a 7-game series, but it's not going to be a sweep. I don't think.
The Lakers have been under 100 points per 100 possessions in the bubble. And you wouldn't think that Avery Bradley and Rajon Rondo would affect things that much, but the truth is they just don't have any guards.
Mm-hmm.
And even though they signed J.R. Smith, he's a joke and hasn't barely played. And they love to play a 2-center lineup because Davis would prefer not to bang with 5, so they play a lot of JaVale McGee, Dwight Howard, etc. That team is only good because LeBron is really, really good and Anthony Davis is also really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
If anything were to happen to either one of them, or even if it doesn't, that team feels pretty vulnerable to me right now. They're still one of the top 3 contenders, but they look a lot less of a sure thing to get the conference finals than they did before this bubble started.
I don't see them. Yeah, I don't see them as a finals contender necessarily, unless Anthony Davis and LeBron just play out of their mind for a month straight, which is not impossible. But like I said, they don't play. That if they don't play well, the Lakers aren't winning. That's it. There's no way it's going any other way. The Suns have, against these teams, at least they've had, Booker could have an off night, Ayton could have an off night, and the other 2 teammates are stepping up. I don't think the Lakers or even the Clippers have that luxury so much. Their stars have got to do what they got to do.
But Kyle Kuzma, I think the Lakers are a little less well positioned than the Clippers in that regard, just because like Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell give them some backup options. Mm-hmm. They can both put up 20 on a night pretty easily.
Yeah.
But even so, and that's kind of weird to me to think like I'd rather play the Lakers than the Clippers. I wouldn't have probably said that before the bubble, but now even having beaten the Clippers, I'm like, yeah, give me the Lakers easily.
Yeah.
Well, it's scary to me though that our best case scenario is Portland. But you know what? If we I don't want to get ahead of myself. If we get the play-in game, even if it's the worst scenario, we have a chance. At that point, we finally control our own destiny.
Mm-hmm.
So if we lose, then that was on us, and that's fine. That like whatever.
The real gut punch is going to be winning tomorrow. Portland and Memphis both win, and we're left on the outside looking in.
Yep. After going 8-0. Fucking 0.
And I would be super proud of it. I wouldn't be like mad, really. I'd be a little bit bummed about the circumstances, but like, goddamn. I mean, what more can you do? You did literally everything you could do. You played 0 of the teams that were ahead of you, so you couldn't control how those other teams did. We talked about that back in the preview for this.
Yep.
The Suns played Memphis 0 times, Portland 0 times, the Spurs 0 times. So all they could do was beat who was in front of them. And if that's not enough to get them in, I mean, that sucks, but like you said, we weren't even really supposed to have been here in the first place. So to be playing meaningful games at the end of the season, that's enough for me.
As soon as I want to start being like, it's not fair of the league to do this, it's like, no, we could have not even been invited at all, and we had all season to play better, and we didn't. And that's not completely our fault, but plenty of it is. So, we'll see.
We shouldn't have been 26-39 before the bubble.
No.
Even if factoring in Ayton's suspension, that team was talented enough that we should have been a few games closer to 500. And man, what a difference that would have made.
I mean, we were like, I think we had something like 12 to 15 game losing streak, or like we lost like 18 of 20 games in one stretch, and that was it. That stretch killed us.
Yep. Yeah, when you have a stretch like that, it's hard to recover from. And I feel like, we did, but just, there were stretches. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we had an 8-game losing streak right in December, and one of those, the one that I like, that I probably point to the most, is losing to San Antonio
in Mexico,
in Mexico City. That feels like the one where if we won that one, we have one more game. We're in the 8th spot right now if we won that one game. Which is depressing to think about.
And in the driver's seat.
Yeah, and in the driver's seat.
We have scenarios where we could lose and still make it.
Yep,
now we can win and still not make it. That's the best. We lose, we're done. We win, and we can still be shut out. And it's like, oh boy. And since the NBA hates us, we're in the first game spot. Everybody else gets to know what we've done before they play. So thanks a lot.
I mean, Memphis is like, what? Are they 1-7 or 1-6 now? Or 2-6?
Yeah, they're 1-6.
1-6.
1-6. So you're looking at the odds, and I know that the actual teams matter of who they're playing, but like, why not go 1-7? You know?
Yeah. I mean, they're playing Milwaukee's backups, and Memphis has been so bad in the bubble. I don't know that they can beat Memphis's backups. It feels like the most likely scenario, like you said, is us playing Portland as the 9th seed.
When Dallas beats us, I'm gonna cry. But again, like that's that would be our fault, at least.
Yep. Exactly.
So, anyways.
Yep.
By this time next week, the Suns will either be in the playoffs or not. Like, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
So,
we talked going in about how we knew Memphis was already way ahead of us. Catching them seemed near impossible, but because we went 7-0 and they went 1-6, we have the chance to catch them. We're still not even there yet, which is ridiculous, but them's the breaks. And how if any of the team even won half their games, it was going to be a really uphill battle. Well, Portland's 5-2. So the fact that we managed to go 7-0 and again threatened them on the last day of the season, I mean, again, that's all you could ask for. We'll see how it goes today. Within a couple hours of this airing, or hell, it's probably, if some people listen to this later in the afternoon when it drops, you'll know if we are really happy or despondent or somewhere in between. I mean, again, if they lose, that sucks. If they win and they don't make it, that sucks harder in some ways. But again, I don't have any shame in that. But we'll see. And if they somehow manage to make the playoffs, guess what we're doing next week?
Having playoff preview.
You bet.
Homework. Oh, right. Final Suns cast.
That feels so uphill. They have to win 10 straight, effectively. And 2 against the same team on a back-to-back. That's probably Portland. I mean,
yeah.
I know we've sort of been hedging at the end of these the last 2 times, being like, well, like 5-3 would be pretty good, but I'd take 4-4. And we're like, well, we started 5-0, but or 4-0, but like, I don't know if they can do better than 2-2 to finish. Maybe we shouldn't keep setting low expectations, but I guess we've just been hurt too many times. Yeah.
Maybe we should, and then keep getting surprised.
Set the bar as high as possible. Let Booker jump the fuck over it.
Yep.
That's the end of this episode. In between shows, you can find us at our website, objectionnetwork.com or youtube.com/objectionnetwork. We'll see you next week for hopefully the 3rd Suns cast in a row.